Hello, I'm Louise Jordan. Welcome to this video series, Discovering Florence Nightingale Through Songwriting. This is the first in a series of 5 short videos where I'll explore 5 aspects of Florence Nightingale's work, whilst also sharing my 5-step songwriting process. I'll use one of my own songs that I've written about Florence Nightingale in each video to demonstrate. I hope you'll enjoy this video if you're interested in finding out about Florence Nightingale, and I also hope you'll be interested in this video if you're interested in songwriting. If you're planning to use these videos to go through my 5-step songwriting process, then you may want to pause to respond to some of the tasks that I suggest. You can find me on social media if you want and start a conversation on there. For a limited time after each video goes live, you'll be invited to make comments and ask questions on the website. Please remember to share what you've created as a result, if you feel comfortable to do that. In this first video of the series, I'm going to tell you about what I found out about Florence Nightingale's work on sanitary reform during the Crimean War. It might not sound like an obvious choice for a song, but I'm going to walk you through my process for going about it. It's definitely the first and quite probably the last time I will ever use the word dysentery in a song. When I first decided to write the live production Florence, I knew that Florence Nightingale had been a nurse during the Crimean War. St Margaret's Church in Wellow is just down the road from where I live, and it's where Florence and some of her family members are buried. So I visited and found out a little bit of information, and I then followed up my research through books. I read Mark Bostridge's biography, which is very comprehensive, if a little bit dense, and very well referenced, which was very useful for finding further places to look. I also found Lynn McDonald's work online and also her books very interesting. Anyone who knows me will tell you that I'm a total museum geek, so it's probably no surprise that I found a visit to Florence Nightingale Museum in London very interesting and useful. There's lots of research that you can do online and from home, not least through books. I don't personally have an ancestry account, but I know people that find that very useful. And I also use the British newspaper archives, usually through my local library, but it is possible to set up your own account as well. I also seek expert advice and start conversations online via email and social media. I find Twitter to be particularly useful when trying to contact historians and authors and academics, and I find these professionals to be very approachable when asking information and advice. Florence's first job was at the age of 33 when she left her home in Romsey in Hampshire, and she travelled to London to help manage a hospital for gentlewomen. Florence's second job was as a nurse for the soldiers of the British Army during the Crimean War. Florence believed in the value of physical and mental health. She thought soldiers needed healthy and active minds so that they didn't become bored and turn to drink. She encouraged them to read and write, and she set up a postal service using her personal funds and contacts so that soldiers could write home to their loved ones and to send money home from their wages. To be physically healthy, the soldiers needed clean living conditions. As soon as they arrived at the barracks hospital in Scutari, Florence and her team cleaned the buildings. They set up a laundry service to clean the clothes that were full of lice and filth, Florence's word for faeces. They ordered new supplies, for example, sheets and clean clothes, so that the soldiers could be clean themselves when they arrived at the hospital. And Florence also encouraged the practice of hand washing to stop the spread of disease. For me, the first step in writing a song is to identify my stimulus. What is it that I'm writing about? This is just a starting point, and it might change as the song develops, but committing something to paper means you're not staring at a blank page. Those of you songwriting along with the video need to decide what you're writing about. Sometimes the first thing that comes to your mind is fine. It could be a response to something visual, like a photograph or an image, a painting in your house. It could be a response to an object that's lying around. It could be something a friend or a colleague said to you. It could be a response to the news and somebody else's experience. It could relate to Florence Nightingale or the NHS or the importance of mental health. It could be something that happened to you today, something you saw, heard or felt. It could be about the nature outside in your garden or something you saw through the window, like somebody else's rainbow sign. Once I've committed an idea to paper, I start to make notes. Let's say, for example, that I was writing a song about the NHS. I've had a lot of thoughts about the NHS recently. Unsung heroes. PPE. Is clapping really caring? How do frontline staff really feel? What's it really like to work in a hospital right now? Remember, these notes are just for you. No one's marking you, no one's judging you, so just write what comes to mind. This is just the starting point. Press pause if you like to make your notes. The next step for me is to release my inner geek and get into some research. For me that means books, blogs, newspapers, museums and websites. If I were writing a song about the NHS now, I'd probably research when it was set up, who created it, why, what were their aims, how has the NHS changed over time. I might look into my own local hospital. How much do the staff get paid there compared to the minimum wage? Does the hospital have a specialism? And I'd want to find out how the staff feel. I might use social media or speak to family and friends. Whilst I was writing about Florence Nightingale, I came across an article about Florrie's lorry. It was a nickname given to the carriage that Florence Nightingale used to travel between the hospitals during the Crimean War. I loved the sound of it. It's easy to remember, it rhymes and it's catchy. I also like it because it challenges the ways that Florence Nightingale is remembered as the lady with the lamp. She didn't simply walk up and down corridors of the hospitals at night. She was an organiser, a manager and a leader. As a nurse, she had a variety of tasks, so I researched what these were and made some more notes. You might want to pause here to do a little bit more research. The next part of the process is to consider what I'm going to say about the topic that I've chosen. I use the question, who are you talking to? Is the song for a friend, for someone your own age or maybe a younger relative? Is it for a neighbour? Is it for a member of NHS staff? Is it for somebody who needs cheering up or a politician? Deciding the audience helps me to set the tone and the style of language that I'm going to use in the song. And it also helps me to decide whose perspective I'm going to write from. With Florrie's lorry, I could have told the story from Florence's own point of view. I could have become a journalist who was breaking the story about Florrie's lorry, or maybe one of the other nurses that was with Florence in the Crimea, or even her mother who is at home. I took some creative license and imagined that Florrie's lorry was the name used by the soldiers during the Crimean War, so I wrote as if they were singing to occupy their time whilst they were in hospital, recovering from illness or injury. I find it really useful to give the song a backstory or a context. I wanted to write about Florence Nightingale's experiences of the Crimean War in a way that wasn't boring. I wanted to bring the story to life, and I wanted to make it fun and educational. Songwriters, you might want to press pause on the video now and identify who your song is for. The media may call her the lady with the lamp, but she's Florrie in her lorry to us soldiers in the camp. They like to talk of nurses so the public might forget fewer soldiers died from battle than from the government's neglect. Here she comes, interesting that Florence Nightingale did so many different jobs while she was a nurse during the Crimean War. The legend of the lady with the lamp makes us think of her walking up and down the corridors of the hospital and mopping the men's brows. In reality, Florence was in charge of supplies, the hygiene of the hospital, and the activities for soldiers. I'm interested in your thoughts. Are there nurses in your family? What jobs do they do? Have our expectations of nurses changed over time? Has the role of the nurse changed, and if so, why? Do we respect nurses now in the same way that we respect the legend of Florence Nightingale? If you're interested in finding out more about Florence Nightingale, I recommend the Florence Nightingale Museum, both online and in person. The Nightingale family had a home in Derbyshire, and Derby museums have got some really interesting online resources. Florence's sister's home in her married life was Claydon House in Buckinghamshire, and that's now a National Trust property, which you can visit. You could do an online search for articles about Florence Nightingale, and there are an increasing number looking at Florence's use of statistics and the way that she used data to campaign for government accountability after the Crimean War. But more on that in the next video. Thank you for watching. I hope that the video has been interesting and useful. Don't forget to stay in touch and share what you've written and any thoughts that this video might have inspired. In the second video, I'll look at how I turn my notes into lyrics, starting with writing a catchy chorus.